All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Yours truly, Ken Johnson, here with you, and we are tracking, some rowdy thunderstorms out there tonight. So I'm calling them because they've gotten pretty strong and they're pretty loud, and they've gotten to where they're producing some pretty good downpours and some gusty winds there tonight. So we are tracking these thunderstorms here. I know some type of a blur there on my camera, but they are pretty significant. Now, if you're wondering, just if you're just joining me here, if you're wondering if we're going to see widespread storms overnight tonight, no, we're not. But some places seeing some pretty good activity right now with several severe thunderstorm warnings. So let's show those thunderstorms. Let me turn the overlay off here. Let me show those thunderstorms to you, and we'll track them real full. I got to turn my weather computer back on. Sorry. But these storms are producing some pretty significant weather right now. Now, it looks like that there might be, at least from a wind standpoint, they may not be quite as strong as they were. But when these storms were up there into parts of Tillman County and the northern Wilbarger County, those things were producing some pretty big winds. Some 70 plus mile per hour wind gusts were being seen with these thunderstorms out there tonight. Currently, and again, I'm about to show you the radar here in just a minute. And with that, we can talk about what these thunderstorms are doing. And not everybody is seeing a storm here tonight. But if you do, it could be pretty loud. It could be a pretty good little thunderstorm that's blowing through there. So let's take a look at it here. Let me make sure everything is as it needs to be. The overlay is off. Let's go to this here. All right. So this is the radar up. Let me make the screen here bigger. And if you kind of take a look here at the radar itself, you notice that we have severe thunderstorm warnings where you see these yellow. Now, again, these are not the spring variety. These are summer variety severe thunderstorm warnings, a little bit different. They're not quite, they don't produce quite the dangers that the spring severe storms would produce. So it looks like the Weather Service has issued a pretty good blanket warning for these thunderstorms here that extends throughout much of Wilbarger County, just west of Electra, and over into a good part of Ford County and even Knox County. And that's for these outflow boundaries that are being generated by these thunderstorms here. You've got one outflow boundary there, and you have another one there. So they've kind of converged up here, kind of near Vernon. And if I put this in motion, let me delete that off. You can see those outflow boundaries as they are colliding here. So with that, you got winds moving in different directions here, and that's going to create a bit of what we call convergence and a bit of an uplift. So you could really see a good area of thunderstorms develop right in there over northwestern Wilbarger. Northern Wilbarger, Vernon could be included in on that, maybe even south of there. Could be some pretty significant winds there. And also, in addition to that, these very, very heavy downpours. Now, there might be a little bit of hail in these. Now, it's not going to be, the big hail like we see in the springtime, but there could be some pea-sized hail in this moving through Chillicothe now, along with the heavy downpours. Now, in Vernon, you're not going to see, at least initially, you're not seeing the strongest of these storms, but we'll see as those outflow boundaries continue to kind of interact with each other. There could be a little bit of an enhancement of some of the storms there, especially just west of Vernon here. But some downpours about to move into Vernon now. Let's look at the winds in these storms here. And if we take a look at the winds, they're not as strong as they were over Wilbarger County, but you still see the outflow boundary itself. And with the outflow boundary itself could be some 40 mile per hour winds, maybe 50 mile per hour winds with that. But then you see over here south of Chillicothe, there's some pretty significant winds. You notice how there's a little bit of a shade, a little bit of a tint of some brown in that area. Well, that's going to indicate wind gusts that are, that's being estimated by radar, which is just a little above the Earth's surface at about 72 miles per hour. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some 60 to 70 mile per hour winds over there south of Chillicothe. Now you get over here into Wilbarger County, and there are some gusty winds in here too. But they're not quite as strong as those to the west there. But we'll have to see if these storms happen to generate any other strong winds out there. But the strongest are south of Chillicothe, and some pretty strong winds coming into Vernon now. We can look up the way into parts of Tillman County. There's still some areas of gusty winds here or there. And if we take a look at the downpours with it, though, you can see how most of the activity here is concentrated over into Wilbarger and Hardeman and down into Ford County. You actually see a little bit of an increase now in some thunderstorms, or a little bit of a thunderstorm development there, a little bit of lightning showing up there. So again, I do think we're going to see perhaps maybe a pretty good increase in storms kind of over in this area with these colliding outflow boundaries. And we could eventually see development even down into here. And we'll have to see, because as this storm boundary, the boundaries continue to move eastward and interact with that northern outflow boundary, we could see additional thunderstorms that could eventually develop over into here. And I'm not going to rule out some storms over into here as well. But at least it looks like, at least from the time being, or this time as of right now, that the bulk of the storminess will kind of be kind of concentrated over into this area here. But I can't rule out, that something could get going over here too. But that would be a little bit later on. It's just one of those things you have to kind of keep an eye on it. Have to kind of see how it all behaves. This is summertime stuff. There's not a whole lot of driving mechanisms. It's just really warm and humid out there. And you got these little outflow boundaries, rain, cold, thunderstorm boundaries, that kind of help kick them off a bit here. So sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. But again, you might see pretty good. We may see a bit of an increase in storm activity over there in western Wilbarger and in parts of Hardeman and Ford counties there. Looks like some storms moving into Vernon now, and I could probably pull up my Vernon tower cam. Let's take a look-see at the Vernon tower cam. This is a live look as the storms are moving into Vernon now. And it shows, a lot of lightning strikes and some downpours. There were some gusty winds there early, and it looks like there's still some pretty good wind gusts there. But this is, not anything tornadic. These are just thunderstorm winds, and there's not going to be anything tornadic, so don't get up to worried about that. But these are producing some pretty good wind gusts still over that way. You can see the tower cams kind of jostling around. This is over there on the high school, pretty close to, I think, the football stadium. It may even be on the football stadium over there. I'm not 100% certain, but I think that's where it's at. But you can see it. It is raining, and lots of strobe light, almost like lightning there. A lot of vivid flashes over Vernon here tonight with those thunderstorms that are pushing on through here. We've had a lot of rain this spring, but, I'd say if the one area that did miss out on a lot of the heaviest rain, it would be the Vernon area. So that certainly is possible that you might get you're seeing some decent rainfall over there. We could wind up seeing some minor flash flooding over here in the Wilbarger County. Just depends on how these thunderstorms evolve and develop here. Again, be decent downpours over Vernon, but the heaviest appears to be just west of Vernon, at this time here, and kind of developing down into Lockett and kind of over here into the western parts of Wilbarger County. You're seeing storms now develop south of Lockett, and you got storms north. So yeah, you're about to see a pretty good area of storms over here along the Ford, Hardeman, Wilbarger County line, and we might see storms develop and get going a little bit further east there along that too. But we'll just have to see what happens and how far east they can get. Of course, our weather information, weather data this time of the year with this type of situation, basically useless. It's not going to tell you much. There were some showers moving through the eastern parts of Tillman County, but those weakened pretty significantly there. Down into Knox County, there's some weakening showers down that way. And there's also this thunderstorm. It's been kind of a slow mover, but been pretty persistent there just east of Jacksboro and over Jacksboro. And looks like there might have been something that tried to develop out ahead of that. I'm not sure if that's actually real data or not. That might be something else. But looks like a little bit of a downpour. The lightning is decreasing there pretty quickly on that storm in Jacksboro. So it looks like that storm's almost a thing of the past. We had some heavy rain in the Dallas area earlier tonight, but that has also moved on out. And these thunderstorms are dropping south, but they are weakening, and they should weaken before they make it down into the hill country. So that's good news. But you go up north tonight, and there's quite a few storms still up here into Oklahoma, northwestern and western Oklahoma, and they're dropping due south. And if we do wind up seeing quite a few storms, there could be some flash flooding over here in western Oklahoma and far northwest Texas. The storms, in Oklahoma City, they're just south of Oklahoma City. They're weakening pretty fast there. But then again, there goes your heavy storms from just south of Woodward down towards Elk City. And they'll drop and drift kind of south of Interstate 40. The storms that were kind of developing out ahead of that have weakened quite a bit there in southwest Oklahoma. Looks like a new little thunderstorm might be trying to develop there just south of Altus. All this activity is moving south. Look at those storms really increasing, just like we said it would there, and along the borders of Wilbarger, Ford, and Hardeman County. Really heavy rain now, and it's expanding quickly, even over into Vernon. And that whole area is really just lighting up now with these heavy storms here, and they're just going to kind of drift. There across Wilbarger County and over here in Ford and Knox County maybe. And eventually you're actually seeing some storms develop behind that first outflow boundary. So it looks like this whole area here is really starting to light up now with some pretty significant, heavy rainfall and thunderstorm activity over this way. And we're watching, and what's triggering it is these outflow boundaries. And you've got two. These are colliding outflow boundaries. You've got the first outflow boundary. And what is an outflow boundary? It's just rain cooled air. That's all it is, produced by these storms up to the north. And you've got this is your first outflow boundary there, about to move through Grayback, moving through Electra now, some gusty winds with that. Then you have another outflow boundary that was produced by those storms over there into Knox County, and as that's moving east, it's helped to trigger a couple little storms over there behind it. But you can see it's interacting with the storm, the outflow boundary to the north. So with the outflow boundary to the south here. And this is a pretty good, this is a lesson, and this will kind of show you how I'm able to forecast this stuff. I've seen this stuff so much in my career. When you get an outflow, this outflow boundary, the winds along and behind it are out of the due west here, okay? Now you got this outflow boundary coming in from the north where the winds are out of the north. So you got these converging in different wind directions in here, and that helps the air kind of pile up and you get added lift along and behind it. Now, even though this isn't a tornado situation, sometimes you can get what's called gustnados along these because you see you see a little wind shear right at the Earth's surface that gets increased a bit. So sometimes you'll see a little gustnado along these colliding outflow boundaries. And of course, it's nighttime, so you probably wouldn't see it now. But during the day, you could see it, and basically just a glorified dust devil that forms on the leading edge of these outflow boundaries. It's nothing to be too concerned with, though. But yeah, some pretty strong. Let's see what the wind gusts are looking like now. Hopefully they're continuing to diminish. That's what my hope is. Still quite a few bright colors out there though on that. Let's see if we can't change this up a little bit here. It still looks to me like there's some pretty strong winds embedded within these areas of storms here. It looks like there's some strong winds still over here into eastern parts of Ford and down here into northeastern Knox County. But there also looks like there might be some increasing strong wind gusts here near and just south of Vernon. That's showing some wind gusts up to 69, 70. So this is enough to create some minor wind damage as these storms kind of drift down to the south and southwest there, and also perhaps produce some power outage. That's a pretty large area of wind gusts in the 50 to 60, 70 mile per hour range there along and south of 287. And that's moving into the Lockett and Grayback areas here. So we follow the outflow boundaries over here into Tillman and Wichita County. They do not appear to be quite as intense there. So you're not seeing as much in the way of thunderstorm development there just yet. You can see we had some stuff that tried to get going there southeast of Frederick, but that's quickly falling apart. It just looks like to me the greatest concentration, the greatest push upwards in the atmosphere is over here in the Wilbarger, Baylor, Ford, and Knox County, the eastern parts of Ford and Knox County, and over here into the western parts and now central parts of Vernon, Wilbarger County, and down into northwestern parts of Baylor County. So what I expect to happen here would be for these storms to continue to intensify kind of down into this area over into here, or at least areas of heavy downpours and gusty winds. We might see a little development over here maybe. As these outflow boundaries continue to develop south and eastward here. I don't know that the storms are going to make it over here. So I don't think they will, but I don't think Wichita Falls or Lawton either one see storms. So I think they're going to stay to our southwest here, I think. Your main axis of storminess appears to be kind of over into this area. And you had this little one down towards Jacksboro, but it's not doing much now. So, but all right, let's see if we got anybody that's got any questions for your favorite weatherman. All right, let's go here. Let's double box this here. All right, there we go. All righty here. Let's put the overlay back on here. We got about 98 people watching this right now. Teresa, if you're still watching, I don't know that you still are. You may not be, but no, I did not mention Iowa Park here. And I don't know that you'll see any. I don't think we will, but it's possible. But I think most of it's going to be west of us here. So, well, I'm not sleeping now. All these floods have made me nervous. Well, as long as you don't live in a flood-prone area, you're fine. But if you do live in a flood-prone area, and if you do, you know you do. If you don't, then you maybe worry about it a little. I think there could be some flooding over there. Some of those storms over in Wilbarger and Ford and Knox County. That's just not moving a whole. That's a big area of heavy storms there. Yeah, a lot of lightning and thunder there into the Kroll area. Can Jefferson County go to sleep? Yes, you can. Thank you, Teresa. You're my favorite too. Yeah, I know the winds were bad there in Vernon. They should be coming down some now, Judy. I mean, Haley. I don't know that we'll go full screen again here. I don't know that Will Barger, excuse me, that Burt Burnett's going to see anything. I think it's going to be to the west of you, honestly. It just looks to me like the concentration of the greatest lift, the greatest what we call convergence is just west of there. And you got this one outflow boundary that might kind of slap you there, but the ones that are kind of interacting with each other are going to probably stay to the south and southwest there. In fact, you're not, at least not yet anyway. We're not really seeing any storms develop over in here behind it. They're mostly kind of developing in this axis here. Seymour, you're probably seeing a bit of a westerly wind there, maybe a west-northwesterly wind there now behind that outflow boundary. You could see some storms develop over in here behind this here pretty soon. Latest radar update actually does have a lot of activity really developing there, kind of along the county borders over to the west. Now, in Vernon, there's still some pretty heavy rain pushing through, probably still some decent lightning, but the worst of the wind should be through Vernon now, and I would expect the rains to begin to let up there pretty shortly. There is a little bit of a thunderstorm, a little lightning up there north of Pumpkin Center, north of Electra, so something isolated could move into parts of Wichita County, maybe just west of Granville. I don't think there's going to be much to that. Your biggest thunderstorm area, again, is this one over here. And we can look at some of the rainfall rates coming out of that. And there's going to be some pretty good rates coming out of it, I bet. This just shows how much rain might be falling out of it during a, in a particular, particular hour here. So let me see if there's a. So this is the one I think I created here, but that doesn't really show a lot of contrast. Or that does there. I like that. I don't like that either. All right, so I'm going to stop this here. And again, these are rainfall rates. And look at all that lightning in there. And this would be the heavy rainfall rates west of Vernon. Again, this is kind of drifting to the southwest there, not towards Vernon. But if you take a look at the rates, the heaviest rainfall rates that I see on radar here, and this is estimated by radar, is that's showing at about 2 to 3 inches of rain per hour there, which would represent a lot of rain just falling over a short period of time between Tolbert and Lockett. And that's going to probably produce some flash flooding. So low-lying areas there, anywhere around any creeks or any little streams or anything, flooding is going to be or low-lying areas probably going to be seeing some flooding over in those areas here. So, and the radar does show the rain, the area of storms is drifting a bit now. So it looks like the heaviest activity on the north side of Vernon has ended, and it's ending pretty quickly south and southwest of there too. So still some pretty good rain towards Chillicothe and beginning to let up in Odell. But if you look north, there's just some more storms up north here. So I mean, you've got a pretty good swath of some pretty heavy rainfall now, basically over here, kind of right in this area there, kind of where we talked about. So that's a pretty good area of heavy rain. Could result in some flooding there. Now you're seeing at least down here to the south, the heaviest part of the storm is kind of drifting, southwest of Vernon and over into the eastern parts of Ford and Knox County there. And it could eventually head into the Kroll area and then Ford City maybe, and then kind of down into Knox County. If you look down into Baylor County, you got this one thunderstorm just west of Lake Kemp. And it'll probably wind up, interacting with or joining forces with those storms up to the north there at some point. So right behind these little outflow boundary intersections there of a lake, I think is that lake divergence. I'm not sure what lake that is there. But anyway, over this little lake here, north of Lake Kemp here, there's, you got some decent little outflow boundary interactions there. So there could be maybe a little bit of an increase in thunderstorms there, mostly rural parts of Wilbarger County. Let's look at the winds now. Still some pretty significant winds coming through over here into these parts of Ford and Knox County here, and even parts of Vernon, Wilbarger County. And if we kind of take a look here at some of these strong wind gusts, You know, that'd be 130 miles per hour. That's not happening. That's not happening. So let's see. Let's see what this shows here. That shows 100-mile-per-hour winds. I don't think that that's right. Let me see what the weather. That would be crazy if we were seeing winds that strong in that. I mean, I wouldn't rule out some some big winds over there, but I don't know, 100 miles per hour. That would be kind of nuts. Yeah, radar does now 70 does seem more like it here, south of Vernon, kind of north of Rayback, into the 72-mile-per-hour area there. But there does appear to be at least some really strong winds over here, though, towards Thalia. These little dots of green, I think, are wrong, but there might be something right in here, maybe. That shows 80 miles. So 80-mile-per-hour winds seem a little bit more accurate, honestly. But those are some strong winds in there. And these are being estimated by radar. That's some pretty significant winds there. Thalia in those areas. South of Rayland, some big winds south of Lockett. So if you're in any of these areas, some really strong winds that are going to create some power out, probably create some damaging winds too. Those are some strong winds, guys. Those are really strong winds there in the storms there. Those are enough to knock down trees and power lines and also create some minor roof damage there too. So now you see a little bit of an isolated thunderstorm that has now developed just north of Electra there behind these little outflow boundaries. I don't think that those are going to get going too much, though. You're probably going to see a bit of an increase there, maybe in northwestern parts of Baylor County, maybe. But hopefully this thing will just kind of rein itself out. There's the latest radar update. There may be some very small pea-size hail in that. Certainly nothing tornadic, though. I'm not anticipating that at all. So don't get worried. Don't be worried if you're afraid of that. So I want to look at something. Look at the Weather Service and see what they've got reports wise here. Well, I don't know. They really don't mention that, but they mention Oakley Union. But though to me those storms look pretty significant there. Still looks like these winds again, just barely above the Earth's surface, could be pretty strong there. That shows 80. I think that's about right. 70 to 80 is certainly possible in these areas of storms there, that from southwestern parts of Wilbarger County through the northeastern parts of Ford County here. So this is where your really strong winds are, right in there. And if you put it in motion, you can see they're kind of moving south, kind of south-southwest there. And I do expect these strong winds to extend down into this area here shortly. It's pretty significant thunderstorms that are getting going here, honestly. There's like another thunderstorm has developed there right over Lake Kemp as that outflow boundary is moving east here. I need to message my wife and tell her that I am having to work late tonight because of these thunderstorms here. So let me message her real last, let her know. So she don't worry. All right, so let's see here what we got here. And again, Kate, I'm not certain that we'll see anything here in Wichita Falls. It just depends on how these outflow boundaries interact. There's really no forecasting here that you do for these thunderstorms here. Well, you do forecast based upon the outflow boundaries, but there's not like any data that you look at that tells you, hey, they're going to be moving in this direction here or whatnot. So, yeah, strong winds in Vernon chat, 80 mile per hour from NWS. Thank you for that report, Brandon. So it looks like we got 80 mile per hour winds there into the into the Vernon area, I guess, here. Lots of severe thunderstorm warnings been issued for this stuff here. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at some stuff here. So, all right. But yeah, there you go right there. But it does look like there's some storms trying now to develop in northwestern Wichita County, but they're not anything major. The big storms are there south of Vernon. A lot of lightning, a lot of heavy rainfall on that as it's drifting to the southwest. You can see the warnings there. Basically, all of Baylor County in a warning, most of Knox, and the eastern half of Ford County in the warnings now too. And that's for these strong gusty winds coming out of these storms. And I'm telling you, folks, there's been some 70, 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts in these thunderstorms up here in Wilbarger and Ford County now. The latest radar does indicate that some of this activity on the western side is weakening a bit. But there's still some pretty good, you're probably going to see a pretty good merger of these storms down here in the northwestern Baylor County. And again, you do see a little thunderstorm now over Lake Kemp and some additional stuff going up north of Seymour. And then you got this blob coming in from the north. Let's see what the winds look like in it now. Still some pretty good winds there being shown by the radar just off the deck here. Just off the just above the ground here. Some pretty good winds there. We see that little light tan color showing up on my radar. Southwestern parts of Wilbarger County and down and now moving into Baylor County. Maybe not quite as strong as they were. Just west of Grayback there, that's a really strong area of wind gust there now showing up. If you kind of take a look in here, that's some pretty significant winds. And again, this is being estimated by radar, probably a little above the Earth's surface, but that's showing 80. That's probably about right. 80-mile-per-hour wind certainly is possible within these areas of storms here. And here's something kind of interesting. You see a little bit of a green blob in there. I wonder if that's a microburst that's developing in there. Let me take a look at this here. I just think that's where you have these interacting outflow boundaries, though. This sudden change in wind direction. I think that's what that is, probably. It does show. Now, this does show a little rotation in there. Actually, it does. This shows a pretty broad rotation in there, showing up right along 183 there. Probably a MCV, we call mesoconvective vortex there. And it's just probably as a result of those outflow boundaries. But that's pretty significant, pretty good area of rotation there. And this is probably going to help some of those winds increase in intensity down there in northern parts of Baylor County. This is currently in the southern half of Wilbarger County. But remember what I was saying a minute ago, you've got wind directions in two different areas because of outflow boundaries here. And you've got this is an outflow boundary there, and there's another outflow boundary down into here. So you've got wind directions like this here coming into this here. So you get this bit of a collision there. And I do believe there's a little bit of a spin in here. It's pretty broad, but it's right in there just south of Grayback. Now, this is not tornado weather by any means, but sometimes you get what we call mesoscale accidents and collisions here, and that kind of changes the game. But that's some really strong winds now about to cross the border of Wilbarger and into Baylor County, right there along that little lake there, just north of Lake Kemp. That's some pretty strong winds in there. And there is some broad spin there telling me there's a little bit of a weak area of low pressure, probably what we call a little mesoconvective vortex that's developed right in that area there. Weather Service wasn't saying much about it, but you can see it there. If you put it in motion, you almost can see that counterclockwise motion to it. Now, I'm not saying it's going to produce a tornado, but this could enhance the strong wind gusts down here into northern parts of Baylor County there. That's some pretty strong wind. And you don't see gate-to-gate shear and all that kind of stuff, so you don't see tornadic stuff in there. But there is, like I say, a little bit of a weak spin, probably a mesoconvective vortex here, and that's going to increase the winds down here in the northern parts of Baylor County. So let me expand this a little bit, and there your outflow boundaries are that are kind of moving on through the area here. Let's see what the latest looks like on reflectivity. It still looks like most of the activity and most of the action is going to stay west of Wichita Falls. But, quite a few storms, though, over here into this area here. Quite a few storms down into here. And they'll kind of move in this direction here. And then your outflow boundary, this one will continue to move east here. And that still may help trigger some isolated stuff further to the east. A little activity towards Jacksboro has weakened completely now. And there's other storms up to the north, and they're producing a lot of strong winds too. And that could drop into southwest Oklahoma in the next several hours here. But again, I'm watching this area, heavy rain, a lot of lightning in this stuff here too. And there may be even some little pea-size hail. Let's do something here. Let's stop this and let's look at some stuff here with this. I like to show this from time to time. I don't do it too often, but I do show it from time to time here. All righty then. Let's look at this here. Let's take the grid off. I don't like that grid thing. I'm just looking at some stuff. Just give me just a second here, y'all. But that's this storm here. Pretty good little thunderstorm top there. Quite a bit of lightning in that showing up too. So that kind of shows you where your bigger cloud tops are. We can also show velocities in this too. Well, that's crazy there. I'm sorry, I'm just playing around on radar here, guys. So, just bear with me for just a minute. Just looking at some stuff here, some data. That right there is probably a little bit too confusing. It's kind of confusing for me too, so I can understand that. That's for sure. So let me see if I can lower some of this here to make a little bit more sense there. I don't guess I can I? Yeah, I don't like that. Let's just go back to what we were doing. I don't like that at all. So anyway, let's look at the latest wind velocities here. And again, I do think there's a little bit of an enhanced wind signature coming into the northern parts of Baylor County now. Some of these winds up here are coming through, probably gusting up to 70, 80 miles per hour here in some of these storms here. Maybe weakening just a tad, but not by much here. Pretty significant winds there. Now, well south of Vernon. Yeah, no, and you do see this now moving through mostly rural parts of Baylor County there. And there's that little spin I was talking about, still south of Grayback. It could be a microburst. It looked like it was a little bit of a swirl in that, which looked like to me a bit of a what we call MCV. And you still kind of see that, but it may wind up being more of what we call diverging signature here. I bet that's what that is. So there was it looks like there was a bit of a microburst there, and you did see that enhanced wind, but you can see that has really dropped. That was some strong winds there, right on the border of Baylor. Those winds had to gust up there pretty high. So the winds do appear to be at least coming down some with these storms. They're not as widespread as they were, but there's still some 70+ mile per hour winds in those. And if we look to the east, you're not seeing a lot of development to the east. So it's mostly in these storms here. Seymour, you're starting to get some of these thunderstorms into your area now, some downpour. So that's what you can expect. A lot of heavy rain, some strong gusty winds. If we get any hail, it'll be really small pea size, and that's it. Tornadic activity threat is pretty much zero. And Weather Service finally has caught up to what I was saying. The potential for intense damaging wind gusts continues across eastern Ford and much of southern and southwestern Wilbarger County. But I think that's starting to move out of Wilbarger County now. Teller Core has also recently developed within the cluster along 283 from near Grayback, capable of large hail in the near term. Taller core. Um, and I do see that core they're talking about there. So there could be a little bit of hail in there, maybe up to the size of Nichols, right along the Wilbarger and Baylor County line. But those are some pretty significant winds, though, we've been seeing in this storm here. Southwestern Wilbarger County now moving into Baylor County and over into Ford County. Still see some of these winds that perhaps are good. Like I say, they may be starting to show signs of weakening a bit, but there's still some pretty good winds in there. That's at least we're not seeing the 80s. We're seeing, well, there you go, 79 to 80. So about 70 to 80 mile per hour winds are still being seen in this area over here. And again, I still see what looks like a bit of a bowing feature over into here. You can see that there. So you do see, quite a bit of damaging winds coming into this area. That's some pretty strong winds. Yeah, that's good. That's going to be enough to create quite a bit of power outages there into Baylor County. And you can see that storm area starting to move east now. Strong winds there. Yeah, this is turning into a pretty significant wind event over here into Wilbarger, into Wilbarger, Ford, and Knox County, Baylor County. This is turning into a pretty significant wind event. Fortunately, a lot of this stuff's over rural areas, but this is going to create some power outages in those areas out there. I mean, I zoom in and my radar is not even picking up any communities over in this area here. But, down towards Vera, maybe Gillian, Vera, Seymour, Maybell, keep an eye to this. This is producing some pretty strong winds. 70 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts, and that's going to be enough to create some damage. In addition to that, some pretty heavy rains as these storms aren't moving very fast. And even a little hail has been showing some signs. But like I was talking a minute ago, you just got these outflow boundary collisions, and that's what created this mess over here. That's what's created this big explosion of storms. I wouldn't be surprised to see this area begin to weaken before too much longer, because you don't have quite as much of a collision over here now. But you could wind up seeing some of these winds come down here pretty soon over here in the bay. I don't know that they'll make it into Seymour, but they could. It'd be interesting. Again, it'd be interesting to see if they can make it any further to the east. You are seeing these storms starting to bow out there along the Wilbarger and Baylor County line there, north of 183, right behind that outflow boundary. The trends are for these storms not to move too much and develop too much further to the east. I'm going to enhance my radar real fast. So it does look like it's trying to develop a little bit eastward there. So maybe Maybell getting in on the act. It's pouring down right over Lake Kemp now. Very stormy night over that way. The storms are now mostly south of Vernon, but there are some little thunderstorms that have developed to the north. And the way these things are looking, if we do wind up getting a steady stream of storms coming in, there could be some flood potential that may show up over into this area here. So if you live in a flood-prone area, you may want to keep an eye on that. In addition to that, we do got these strong wind gusts with it as well. So again, our main concern would be these strong winds coming out of Wilbarger into Baylor, Ford, Knox County areas as they move southward. You're seeing some pretty good winds there now, about to cross, that are crossing over into northern Baylor County. Strongest winds are still north of Seymour, but you're going to see these winds pick up out of the north pretty quick here. And along that leading edge here of these this thunderstorm area that's moving in, along this leading edge here, you're going to look at these winds blowing somewhere in the 40 to 50 mile per hour range, but they could increase a bit behind it and come in there into the 70 to 80 mile per hour range. But they could weaken some here pretty soon. I'm thinking that's going to happen, but we'll just see. All right, so let's see. Could Wichita Falls, Melissa? It's a chance Wichita Falls could get some, but I think that most of the activity stays to our west. I think. Same thing with Iowa Park. I think most of it's going to stay west. There could be maybe some gusty winds. These outflow boundaries push on through. Maybe something. We'll see if they can start developing a little bit further to the east, but I think they're going to stay out of Wichita Falls. Yeah, Lake Kemp's getting hit pretty hard right now. Lake Kemp really stormy at this time, and it's going to probably pour down rain there for quite a while here. There's a little weakening storm over Electra coming into Electra now, but it would be it's weakening pretty fast. I'm not on TV because this is this is pretty significant event, and and I probably should be doing a few little updates, but I found that I can reach just as many people on social media as I can on TV. The way the way the weather world works these days, people look on their phone before they do TV anyway, unless it's like a tornado or something like that. I probably, I actually let my production crew go home. So I'm not going to do updates on TV for this. It's not like a life or death situation. Well, I mean, it could be, but it's not like a tornadic situation here. Yeah, there are interesting shapes on here. Again, a lot of it's because you just got you just have weak shear in the atmosphere, so you don't see the development like supercells. You don't see the hook echoes and whatnot. These are basically outflow boundaries and collisions and different things in the atmosphere making these storms, driving these storm clusters. In fact, it looks like the lightning may even be decreasing just a hair there south of Grayback, maybe. So they may be showing signs of weakening some. I hope so. Now, you still see some pretty good winds there. Again, a lot of that's aloft, but still some good winds there moving in behind these thunderstorms there over into northern parts of Baylor County, coming in just northwest of Lake Kemp. As they drop out of Wilbarger County, they kind of have a tendency to weaken a little bit. So maybe not too bad. Maybe it is showing. I do believe these storms are trying to show signs of weakening some, which is definitely some good news. But again, if somebody asks me why are we, and I'm not on TV for this, it's not. I usually reserve TV interruptions for like something like a tornado or something like that, or if some really if our if like there's like some colossal hail, or if there's this is some pretty strong wind gusts. And again, I probably if production were here and I had a director here, I definitely probably would do some cut-ins for this, but it is kind of rural, so that also plays a role in it too. So, but again, I think a lot of people these days pick up their phone before they turn the TV on to watch this stuff, especially in the middle of the night like this. The storms to the north are weakening some. They may fall apart before they even get here. But heavy rain has overspread all of Lake Kemp now, pouring down rain out there. Electra, a little bit of a shower, thunder shower moving on through, but it isn't going to last long. Those are pretty weak. So the winds are definitely coming down a bit there as they're dropping out of Wilbarger into Baylor County. They're definitely weakening some. Still some gusty winds. Still could be some damaging winds over there, but it definitely looks like the storms are weakening. That's good news. You don't see quite as much lightning, and what we call reflectivity is also the DBZ levels and the reflectivity are also beginning to come down some now. But some heavy rain is developing into Seymour. You're definitely going to get that, and some gusty winds. But hopefully that's it. But those turn into some pretty active thunderstorms. There's pretty significant thunderstorms for sure. Vernon, you're now in the clear of these storms. Still a little bit of shower activity towards Lockett and Grayback. Still some downpours up, just west of you there. Quite a bit of lightning. Still in that one cluster. But you're kind of seeing this top where you see this darker color or this little purplish looking color. That's your storm top, your core, and it is showing signs of coming down a bit. So I do think these are weakening some here. But, heavy rain definitely over Lake Kemp into Seymour and Maybelle now, or coming into Maybelle. I think these are going to stay west of Wichita Falls, though. Wonder if we can see these from Wichita Falls. Let's see. This is a Wichita Falls camera. I think this is looking west. Yeah. So I'm pretty good breeze out there blowing. This is on top of the one of the I think it's the storm tower out at Castaway Cove Water Park. But now there's some internet issues out there with this. It's been kind of laggy, so if there is lightning, it may not even show it because it is kind of a bit laggy there. I may have to get them to go out there and take a look at that. So time right now is just a little bit before 11:30, and to kind of reset the situation, we do got these severe thunderstorm warnings out over here. Wilbarger, Baylor, southeastern Ford into Knox County. I think southeastern Ford is now in the clear. I think the heaviest is going to be now south of you. And again, these storms are showing some signs of weakening. Still got a little concentration of lightning, though, right around that core there, just south of Grayback. So you still got a pretty decent thunderstorm updraft there. But I don't see these wind signatures like I did. There's still some gusty winds back in there, but they are not like they were. Looks like there might be a microburst there just north of Seymour, maybe. If that's not as long as that's not a false data there, that could be a pretty good little microburst right there where you see that little bright green color. It could be a little microburst right in there just north of Seymour. And microburst, again, is just when you see these, the thunderstorm tops kind of collapse a little bit, or you see the thunderstorm, just a lot of the momentum from the storm falls down out of the top of it and reaches the Earth's surface, and it hits the ground. And all that momentum, can create damage. All that water, that heavy water coming down and strong winds, and it can create sometimes it can create some big winds there. So maybe a little bit of a microburst there just north of Seymour, maybe. But you definitely don't see the strong winds like you did. No, you're good, Teresa. The storms are over with in Vernon now. Vernon's already got bad. Vernon's good now. I don't think anything else is coming from Kroll, Candy. I think you're good. Matter of fact, I'm probably about to jump off here in a second. So the Weather Service says damaging wind potential moving into the Seymour area coming up here in just a few minutes. But again, it does look like these winds are not as strong as they were. Because when they were up in the Baylor, Wilbarger County, we had widespread 70, 80 mile per hour wind gusts there. There's still some pretty gusty winds there, but it's not like it was. These gusty winds are moving into Seymour now, but it's not as intense as it was. You still actually see a little bit of a lightning increase there just north of Seymour. Pretty good lightning core still right there underneath that core. Still a lot of lightning right in that area just southwest of Grayback. So that's still a pretty intense little area of heavy rain and storms there. But even the overall structure of this is, showing some signs of coming down a bit. Although there might be a little bit of an uptick there in some of those little thunderstorms there, just west southwest of Electra, maybe over into Wichita County. There could be a little bit of a development, but nothing too major at this point in time. You just got that little outflow boundary that's interacting with those storms there. I think that's what's caused a little bit of an uptick there. You don't really see a lot of lightning there, and a good indication that a storm is increasing is when you see lightning starting to jump up. Heavy rain now over Seymour. Still believe you got a bit of a microburst right in there. See that little bright green color is? I believe you got a pretty good little microburst right there. That's probably some pretty strong winds in this area here. They're kind of spreading out. Kind of in all directions. A little microburst there just south of Lake Kemp. The winds don't look incredibly strong. I mean, definitely something there. Still some pretty good winds back there in the parts of the northern part of the county here. Now, still some 60 to 70 mile per hour winds in there. 60, 65. So widespread 60 mile per hour winds there over the northern parts of Baylor, southern parts of Wilbarger County. And that might find its way into Seymour here pretty soon. We'll have to just kind of see. Like I say, it's the storm is trying to weaken a bit now, so hopefully that trend continues. A little gusty wind in Maybelle. right along 277 and 183. There's that little uptick in thunderstorms there, kind of just southwest of Electra. You may see, maybe, I don't know. We might see a little bit of an increase in thunderstorm activity over into this area here, maybe. So maybe KMA, Cadane Corner, maybe down towards Dundee, and maybe the area towards Lake Diversion. Those areas could see maybe a little bit of maybe a little bit of an uptick in some thunderstorm activity there here pretty soon. We'll have to just see if that does indeed happen. I don't see a lot of lightning there yet, so that tells me that these updrafts aren't incredibly strong, but they're, they are showing a little bit of an increase in some of the rainfall amounts there. The lightning still pretty intense there, right around the core, but even that's beginning to come down a bit. Maybe a little bit of an increase in some of the lightning over Lake Kemp and into Seymour here. That storm is really blown up down there, and Haskell and Throckmorton, some pretty good storms down that way. But if you look, you got other storms trying to come in, but these storms are showing signs of weakening here, but they still could, impact southwest Oklahoma, northwest Texas well after midnight. But they're going to be moving into an area, I believe, that's been been stabilized pretty good. So I don't know that there'll be a lot of storms over there. There wound up being a pretty stormy night there in the northwest Oklahoma and southwest Oklahoma, northwest Texas, though. Yeah, you're definitely seeing the core shift a little bit, not quite as intense as it was. Still some decent lightning over here. A little bit of an uptick in some of the storms over here in southeastern Wilbarger, a little bit in the far western Wichita County now. So you can see the storms now kind of just forming over or just to the south and southwest of Maybell. Some downpours increasing in Seymour. There could be a bit of a flood threat there. Because these heavy down, these storms are not moving very quickly. I'm surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some flooding over Lake Kemp now and south of Vernon. But you can just look and see. It almost looks like that lightning is that core stuck there, just southwest of Graybacks. Those lightning strikes, while they have decreased a little, they kind of stay in that same spot. A lot of heavy rain in that area too. So these storms will continue to kind of develop down into this area here. And you might see at least some development, some isolated development over into here, maybe a little bit. Isolated. But the main axis appears to be over into here. And I'm okay with that because we've had so much rain this spring and early this summer. My yard is green and lush. I wouldn't mind getting a little bit of a downpour over it, but I really don't want a lot of heavy rain because that means that the water's standing and my dogs get into it and get muddy and wet, and it just makes it messy. So it looks like 64 mile per hour wind gusts on the Seymour mesosite a few minutes ago here. Yep, 60 mile per hour wind gust there in Seymour right now, 60 plus. Those storms, Karen, are dropping down to the south, but I would think they would weaken here some. Those storms have increased a bit there in southeastern Wilbarger County. I'm trying to see if these things are going to develop any further. But the winds have definitely come down quite a bit. So there's some 60 mile per hour wind gusts in and around Seymour now. But you can see how this stuff is really falling apart. And I do expect that weakening trend to continue here. So, all right. So what I'm going to do is I'm about to jump off here, guys. I'm about to go home. I think we're going to be all right. So if I need to do anything else, I'll just jump on from home and do that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think they'll die out before they get down there, Katie. I hope so anyway. All right, everybody. I'm about to jump off of here. I'm out. If your area, I'm out of your area. I think let's look at. I'll look at you real fast, Valerie. Let me look down your way first. Let me look. I don't want to ignore you. There's storms definitely to your north here, and I would think that after midnight, that these storms are, which is almost midnight now. I would think that maybe in the next couple of hours, that these outflow boundaries drop to the south. There could be some storms that may try to find their way towards you. Now, gusty winds, downpours, those are your main concerns here. I'm not saying that it will, but they could. They just say they definitely look like they could. So thunder, loud thunder, lightning with that, and it could, again, impact Abilene, maybe 1:30, 2 o'clock, something like that. But there's your axis of storminess tonight there. You can really see it. Kind of like that. That's your axis. Anything outside of that would probably be isolated. So, but we'll keep an eye on that for you. All right, everybody. And Teresa, Vernon, you can go to bed. Thunderstorms are done. No, they're not getting stronger. They're weakening a bit, Teresa. Those storms down toward Haskell are increasing some, but the storms down at least over in northwest Texas, southwest Oklahoma. I'll look at it one more time before I go, but they are weakening quite a bit here. They're not quite as intense as they were, which is I am okay with that, because I'm ready to go home. I know you guys don't like storms in the middle of the night. I don't either, because I want to go home and go to bed. But you do see some new thunderstorm development over Baylor County, from Wilbarger into Baylor County. Now, the outflow boundary moves eastward. It doesn't have as much what we call converging air over here in the Wichita and Archer County. So anything that develops over here would probably be isolated. But I'm not saying nothing will, but there could be some stuff that could get there. But the main axis is to the west here. A lot of heavy rain south of Vernon. Vernon, you're good now. Maybe an isolated shower or thunder shower, but you're good. Looks like the heaviest activity still over southern Wilbarger and most of Baylor County. Lake Kemp, and flooding is going to be a concern over in these areas. New thunderstorm development now on the east side, or just east of Seymour and down into Throckmorton County. But again, further to the east, I think we're okay. And if we look at the winds and the storms here, they're not as intense as they were. They really have come down quite a bit. They're not nearly. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if these warnings are canceled. But don't be surprised, though, if we get a little flooding in some of those areas. If we do, you've dealt with these things before. So if you do see some flooding, if you're living in a flood-prone area, then you get out. That's what you do. So how high the winds, I don't know, but I'm estimating that in the Vernon area, at least 70-mile-per-hour winds, maybe even 70 to 80-mile-per-hour winds in Vernon. It was pretty strong there, especially south of Vernon there. Renata, I don't think so. If we do, it'd probably be isolated, but I think most of it's going to stay west of us here. Matter of fact, I live in Lakeside City. I'm about to go home, so no, Kroll shouldn't get any more. But maybe some more thunder shower activity, but nothing intense anymore from Kroll. So, all right, guys, I am jumping off of here. Y'all have a good night. And